Ah, nothing like a day of nice, on and off New England drizzle to make up for that deserty nonsense last time around. Noosa Finest Yogurt's Meredith Miller gets the Cyclocosm Fair Play Award for least ridiculous start grid wheel placement, though with a knee full of stitches, she may have just been looking for a calmer, safer alternative to fighting for position in a traditional cyclocross start. Kona's Helen Wyman also seemed cautious, giving a little safety tap here, but on the flip side of the coin was Arlie Kemmerer of PB2 Pro Cycling, who authoritatively took the tricky hole shot, where things went decently smoothly until a touch of wheels cascaded back to put the final third of the riders on foot. Kemmerer led confidently early, while Cal Giant's Rachel Lloyd took advantage of the tightly spaced pack to gain positions, sweeping up into the top three through some aggressive lines in the early corners. Trek Factory Racing's Katie Compton also didn't have a particularly strong start, but GE Capital American Classics Courtney McFadden kinda nods her by. Maybe to save the energy of closing a small gap, maybe to poach some lines, but it doesn't go so well for Compton up this steep flyover shortly afterwards. Race leader Kemmerer opts for the safe route running, and Lloyd can't quite ride it, meaning Neon Velo's Gabby Duran and McFadden are the only ones to get over it without unclipping, and the end result is a pretty decent gap. But Lloyd and Compton make the bridge in seconds, and the lead group continued to go throughout the lap until Compton slipped around the front on the first power section, then added more space riding a brutal stairs to run-up transition, a move that behind her could only be duplicated by Duran. Compton hit the pavement with a few seconds advantage, but Lloyd was undeterred, putting on a pretty bold solo chase against inevitability, while Miller finally started getting the diesel revved up, closing in on the leaders as Kemmerer began to fall back. In third place, Wyman made a pretty unhurried pursuit of Lloyd, closing things down slowly to about a few seconds by the first flyover, which continued to be tricky as Cannondale Cyclocross World's Katie Antonu and Miller showed with a tangle here. Wyman's chase stretched the group behind her, forming fairly even 1 and 2 second gaps all the way back through Miller in 7th. Luna's Magali Rochette had passed Kemmerer and was closing in on this train of leaders, but slid out on the deteriorating surface following the tabletop jump. While Compton's advantage continued to widen, a nice battle was forming for second, with Wyman closing the gap to Lloyd but then nearly falling off the pace of the group with a poorly thought-out remount between the stairs and flyover. Behind them, Duran, Miller, and Antonu formed up in a battle for 5th. But it was a fight that didn't last long. Miller took advantage of Duran's first flyover bobble to push clear, while up front, Compton continued to exert her dominance, remounting to ride the post-stairs run-up while her 3 closest competitors were all relegated to running. As Wyman's unclip and outrigger down the other side showed, conditions were only getting looser as the race wore on. Lap 4 started to see Wyman and Lloyd distancing McFadden, coming out of corners a little bit more aggressively and keeping fluid in lower gears to the course's steepest sections, carrying a better exit speed and eventually riding the GE Capital rider off their wheels. Compton's cruise at the front of the race continued, pushing the course tape on corners and maybe exercising just a touch of radness over the tabletop, and using her solitude to take wide, high-traction lines. After letting the Kona rider lead for most of the lap, Lloyd attacked into the course's biggest climb, but Wyman was up to the task. Lloyd surged again at the bell, but again Wyman responded, even feeling confident enough to come inside Lloyd later in the lap and return the favor on this flyover. But an attack by the Cal Giant rider past the pit finally seemed to create separation, though it still wasn't a done deal as Lloyd employed extra caution on her final trip up the last flyover. As Rochette showed later, it was getting extremely slick. But there would be no change in the final podium, as Compton cruised home to an easy win, with Lloyd riding out the remainder of the lap for second, and Wyman coming in third. I'm Cosmo Catalano, and that's how the race was won.